What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So today we're going to talk about the Senate race in Mississippi. Now, I want to preface this by saying, when it comes to Mississippi, I'm not saying that Mississippi is going to flip to a Democrat. But when we're starting to look at some of the latest polling coming out of Mississippi, it gets really interesting. This is one of those states that I see as a likely Republican state, so I don't know if that's going to change. But what I'm seeing is the voters are changing the way they feel about candidates. We see this in South Carolina, another likely Republican, likely Republicans will win in South Carolina as well, but the voters are changing. And if we're starting to look at some of these different states, some of these different Senate races, and we're seeing that, okay, in a normal situation, Republicans would win by plus 10. They win by 15, 20 points. But now they might win by 5 points, 7 points, and it could be even closer. What does that say? So if we're looking at that in Mississippi, what does that say about some of these other states, some of these other Senate races that are much closer? Are those Senate races going to flip for Democrats? And so that's why when we start looking at places like Mississippi, although it would be hard for a Democrat to win in Mississippi, when we see that the polling is showing that it's a lot closer than it should be, that should send off alarm bells to Republicans, because it shouldn't even be a competition in some of these states. And so I want to focus on that in this video. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video. If you're watching this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, so let's take a look. This is a headline here. And I'll show you a little bit more information about SPLC Action Fund. And so let me show you their headline here. It says, new poll of likely voters shows Mississippi Senate race tightening as voters continue to sour on Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. So when we look at this, and let me go down, I want to just show you, like I said, anytime we're looking at different, if we're looking at the Associated Press, Axios, some of these different outlets that we're more familiar with, then that's different. But when we're looking at this Action Fund and some different outlets that I'm not really familiar with, I do want you guys to have a little bit more context on this, okay? So Impact Research, they're the pollster, and they did this for SPLC, okay, this article that we're reading right now. This is a progressive, Democratic-aligned source, okay? So we already know it leans left. And so the polling that we get could be, that could impact the polling. So I just wanted to put that out there. But let's look at the polling, because the polling is pretty shocking. So first off, let's see. It was conducted between April 8th and April 12th. And the sample size was 500 likely Mississippi voters. And this is for the general election. So this is for November. And this is how they conducted the poll or the survey: 225 phone calls, 275 text messages. The margin of error here is plus or minus 4.4%. And we'll move down. I'll just show you the numbers here. So Cindy Hyde-Smith, 42%. Scott Colom, 39%. And then you have an independent here, Pinkins, and he gets 6%. And then undecided, 13%. This is important. Undecided, 13%. And we're seeing the margin right here, +3, so +3 for Cindy Hyde-Smith. And so this is a very close race, and this is within that margin of error. And you have undecideds at 13%. And then there's some more interesting information that we received in this poll. It says the same poll also found that 53% say they would prefer someone else over re-electing Hyde-Smith. 53%. The majority of the people who were polled said that they want someone else. They do not want Cindy Hyde-Smith. We saw a similar poll coming out of South Carolina saying that the majority, I think it was in the 60% or more, said that they wanted someone else other than Lindsey Graham. And so we're seeing this in Mississippi as well. And so people, they might not be sold on the Democrat, but they do feel that someone else, they want to see someone else. And when we're looking, if we go back to the polling here, so you have Scott Colom here at 39%, you have Pinkins at 6%. So you could have, and I read an article, and they were saying the independent is getting about 70% of the people who are voting for the independent are coming from the Republican side, even though Pinkins was a Democrat. Okay, so he ran as a Democrat in the past. And so he could be siphoning, he could be taking some of the vote from Colom right now. But what we could be seeing is Republicans that are upset with Hyde-Smith, and they're deciding, you know what, I think we should vote for the independent, as it could be a protest vote, or, you know, they just could be, you know, they really want an independent over a Democrat or a Republican. And so that could potentially be what we're seeing. But all in all, when it comes to Hyde-Smith, her numbers should be much better than what they are now. We shouldn't see a poll where she only has a 3-point lead. She should be in the double digits. And because she is not in the double digits, that is why when we're taking a look at some of these other states, and let me just let's pull up our map here. We're taking a look at some of these other states. That's why if we look at a Mississippi, and a Mississippi is no longer a solid red, let's say it's now leaning for, or likely that a Republican will win in that state, and not a solid Republican win, you have to start looking at some of these other states and thinking, okay, if we do see a close race in Mississippi, what does that mean for Texas? What does that mean for Alaska? What does it mean for Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Maine? Are Democrats going to be able to flip those seats much easier? Because in Mississippi, voters are, you know, they want someone else. And so that's why we're looking at some of these states like Mississippi, like South Carolina, even like Florida. We're not saying that those seats are going to flip to a Democrat, but if those races are much closer, that is the alarm bell that Republicans are seeing right now. And they're saying, hey, we need to figure out what's going on, because we're not satisfying the voters in some of these solid red states. And if we're not satisfying the voters in these solid red states, when it comes to these states that are leaning Republican or that are likely Republican, those states, Democrats have an opportunity to flip some of those seats. And so that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about Mississippi. But right now, as it stands, if there were an election held today, within that margin of error, Hyde-Smith would most likely win. But we don't know what's going to happen. We still have some time, about 7 months before the election. And so a lot can change in that 7 months. And so we'll just have to see how that plays out. The economy is the number one issue. And so if the economy is still struggling, we're going to see similar numbers when it comes to Hyde-Smith against Colom in Mississippi, as well as all over the U.S. We're going to see similar numbers. And if our economy gets even worse, we could see a Mississippi in play. We could see a South Carolina in play. And so we'll just have to see how it all plays out. But I want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think about Mississippi? I've had some people in the comments ask me about Mississippi and say, can you take a look at Mississippi? And so that's why we're doing it today. And yes, this race is much closer than it should be, according to the latest polling. So let me know your thoughts below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.